Welcome back, everyone, to the ABL review. Here we are with the South draft analysis for season 22 of the ABL. South's looking a lot different this season than it did last season. So, just kind of hop into things. We have 3 returning teams from the South. We've got Mike, formerly of the Washington Commanders. Actually, was he a team before that? Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, so we got Mike. Now he's the Washington War Turtles. He was the Southside Squirtles. He is obviously evolved. Looking forward to him next season as the Boston Blastoise. We got but that's not a real suggestion. Keep your team. You're stuck with it now. Papka and the Texarkana Toxics. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this. Love this logo. So glad he's back to the green and orange. Gotta get that updated on the Discord. And also returning, we have the rising superstar Mitch. Not rising as much as he used to be in the old days. So I think Mitch is the only person in the South here who's only played in the South, with the exception of the 2 new teams, which we'll go into in a little bit. Relegated team, we have Logan. The only champion we have here former champion rather, that we have here in the South. Darren left the South last season. Kyle and Dakota left the seasons before that. We'll see if Logan has more luck down in the South this season. Then 2 new players coming in. We've got Keenan. He's one of Zach's many recruits to the league. He wins a championship, and then he's just like, yeah, we'll bring in more people. Feed me more. So got Keenan here. That's Papcoon submitting his tears. You can ignore that. Excited to see what Keenan can do. My understanding is he comes with at least somewhat of a Pokemon background. I think his team shows that. And then we have Joel, recruit from actually Mike, I believe. So thank you for joining. Seems he knows what's going on too. I like the team he's put together. We'll get into it later. I think Mike said he's played a lot on the OU ladder in the past, so at least he's familiar with the process. So, like last season, I'm just gonna jump into talking about the teams. Not gonna do like a grading thing, just because I feel like it's kind of hard to be objective, like do a nice objective thing on that. So okay. So here we go. We'll jump into Papkin's team first. So first thing we're going to do is take a look at the speed tiers. I like what he's got going on here. Relatively fast. A little bit of a gap from 86 to 100, but that's not too bad. It's a big gap from 142 to 115, but that's not really a problem. 115, I think, is as high as you need to go most times. Beyond that is just a little bit extra, and he's got basically the top of the heap in terms of speed. Very few Pokemon fast in Dragapult. It's going to force a lot of stuff in the... And plus, having Ambipom here is also really good, because that means I think you'd have to be 130 speed or higher to be able to go Adamant or Modest, like not a boosting speed nature, if you want to still stay ahead of Ambipom. And then Dragapult is going to just kind of be able to run Adamant or Modest most weeks if it wants to, just because of the absolute towering speed it has. As far as speed tiers go, don't see any big problems. Let's real quick look at any exploitable weaknesses he has. So we see these red boxes. Rock looks like a problem. So it only has the 1 rock resistant Iron Treads. Has quite a few weaknesses. Okay, so good news, bad news about that. Good news is these Pokemon that have the weaknesses to it are all Pokemon that really like to run heavy-duty boots anyways. So at least that isn't much of a concern. Even if he doesn't want to run heavy-duty boots, he's got Serena, Mandibuzz, Glamora, and Iron Treads that can all remove hazards pretty effectively. So I'm not too worried about that from a hazards perspective. We're just gonna do what we did last year and kind of keep an eye out for. You know what? Let's actually jump over the draft board real quick. Offensive rock type Pokemon. I mean, Papkin's got one, but he doesn't have to worry about that. No offensive rock types on the Pittsburgh Piplup. Mudsdales, no offensive rock types. Crimson Hive, Bastion's not really an offensive rock type, and even if it was going to be offensive, it doesn't have a lot of rock moves that can really use that effectively. Rock types here, Colossal, not big time offense. And Sudowoodo is probably the most offensive rock type in this league, and it's a Sudowoodo. It's just click and head smash. So I'm not too concerned about that rock's weakness, or the rock weakness, because I think he has it covered in terms of how he's going to handle hazards, and I think offensive rock types in the league is not much of a fear for him. Okay, so continuing on, let's take a look at hazards. I mean, he's got the hazard setter in Glamora, and then he's got Iron Treads, which can also get up rocks. As far as like that, those are his only options to remove hazards, or sorry, set up hazards. He's got plenty of options to remove hazards. It seems like he's probably just going to be running, not dealing with a lot of hazards this season, which I think is probably good for him, because like, check out the Volt Switch and U-turn that he's got going on here. It's going to be so hard to get a good matchup. U-turn, Volt Switch, U-turn, no switch. That's Volt Switch, Articuno gets U-turn, Volbeat gets U-turn, and Baton Pass, something to look out for. U-turn, flip turn. Everything on his team is pretty much everything on his team, with the exception of Glamora, gets some sort of switch initiative. This is a pretty, like, I was gonna say this is kind of like a high offense team, but he does have a defensive backbone, and Mandibuzz, Almalola, Serena, and Rotom Heat can definitely play a defensive role as well. I really like how this team is coming together. Like, looking at it. Let's scroll down here and look at this stuff. Plenty of screeners. I don't really think a lot of like setup threats on this team. Like Comfey is obviously a big setup threat. Comfey has the capability of getting 4 to 6 KOs every week if the matchup calls for it. Dragapult, obviously potentially a big setup threat with Dragon Dance. Not as easy to do, but so yeah, a lot of dual screens. Only the one Wish Passer, but Aloe's a great Wish Passer. He's got plenty of utility with Taunt and Knockoff. Toxic users, Thunderwave users, Will-O-Wisp. The only thing he's missing there is Spore. And he also doesn't have a lot of priority. But I do think that his team is bulky enough, got enough speed, it's got enough type synergy. I love what he's put together here. It just looks like a real solid, like, do-it-all team. What do I think is... Let's see. Let's look stat-wise what his shortcomings are. Special attackers. Yeah, Dragapult's a pretty good special attacker. 100's not great, but he's got really good special moves. And like I said, he's probably going to be able to run Modest a lot of weeks. Glamora being his strongest special attacker, I think is a concern. Because Glamora, I think, functions best. It can definitely do other things, but I think, especially with the way this team is set up, with keeping hazards off his side of the field and getting switch initiative, I think Glamora is probably best used as kind of a suicide lead to get up hazards and die. It's not going to be a special attacker you can really lean on. So if he runs up against a real hard physically defensive wall, it's going to be hard for him to break past it without setup from Comfey or just kind of wearing it down. Like, Volbeat passing a Tail Glow to either Comfey or Dragapult, I think is something we're going to see attempted a couple of times this season. And just something to watch out for. In terms of like roles to play, I think he's got everything covered. I don't think offensively this team is super scary, but it is a matchup nightmare just due to the fact that hazards are going to be up. He's going to be volt switching, U-turning, flip turning, and keeping that momentum up, forcing other teams into bad matchups, and they're going to get torn apart on the hazards. Because he's going to be bringing Dragapult a lot of weeks to discourage the Rapid Spin. Doesn't have anything to discourage Defog, but Defog's harder to come by than it has been in the past. Name of the game is get up hazards and put people in the vortex. That's what they're doing in Texarkana this season. So looking forward to seeing what Papcoon has to do. I'm actually going to move on to the team that drafted second. We've got the Pittsburgh Piplup. So we're going to do the same thing and take a look at speed tiers. Looks really solid. A little bit of a gap here, but that's also in the speed range where, like, it's not too big of a deal, because that's like, that means stuff that's like 82 and below are going to be running adamant. And honestly, they could probably run 0 speed against, if you're an 80 base speed Pokemon and you're going up against the Pittsburgh Piplup, you could probably, if you wanted to, run 0 speed, because Oinkologne, that's how it's pronounced, yeah, Oinkologne, Empoleon, Galarian Weezing, they're not running speed. You can't catch Magmortar if it's max speed. So you could probably take quite a bit off speed and you'd be in a comfortable spot. Otherwise, I love what he's got going on in terms of his spread of the speed tiers here. I think it's perfect, pretty much. Little gap here, but not a big enough gap to be concerned about, I think. So yeah, I love how his speed tiers are set up. Let's look at weaknesses. A little heavy on the fire weaknesses. He's like 3 resist to 4 weaknesses there. Maybe something a little exploitable since it's a Sun team. Flying, I think, is maybe a bigger concern. So he's got no rock type, just the 1 steel type. No electric, which is surprising. That's not something you see very often. Yeah, this flying weakness, I think, could be a problem. Let's take a look at flying types and offensive flying types in the league. I'm not going to call either of the flying types on Papcoon's team offensive. Same thing with Gligar over here. Corviknight's not offensive. Honchkrow is a problem. Honchkrow's very strong. Flying types here, Zapdos. On this team, probably not super offensive. It's got to rely on Hurricanes. So maybe a little bit of a dodged bullet there, but let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Could be a problem. Oh, you know what, though? Interestingly, we'll circle back to that in a minute. Flying types here, Altaria and Charizard. Not super scary, but could pose matchup problems for the team. But actually, let's jump back to Pittsburgh's team, because I just kind of realized something there. Special flying types are even less scary for this team because they rely on Hurricane and Air Slash, and Brambleghast is not only immune, but gets an attack boost from that. So, pretty interesting there in terms of what this weakness might actually force. It might actually make better opportunities for Brambleghast. That's really interesting. Sorry if the music keeps cutting weird. I got kind of a little allergy situation going on, so I got to stop and blow my nose every once in a while. Okay, what other weaknesses we got? They had a little bit of a steel weakness, but I don't think that's really bad enough to worry about. I think that's a handleable thing for most teams. Yeah, let's take a look at hazards. Got a lot of hazard options. Less clearing options, but he's got enough that I wouldn't count this as a concern. I think Brambleghast is going to be able to come to a lot of games. Same thing with Weezing. Yeah, I think I think he's in a good hazard situation. Not too worried about that. A little light on switch initiative. So, as opposed to like Papcoon's team, it's going to be super easy for him to just be able to click U-turn or Volt Switch a lot of the time and get in the Pokemon he wants and make better matchups. That could end up becoming a little bit passive. Also, sometimes people can just kind of like big balls it and say like, oh, he's not going to attack me, he's going to U-turn. Which makes Papcoon's team a little bit more susceptible to aggressive play. But for Pittsburgh, they're going to have to play aggressively to get the matchups they like. So, something to watch out for there. Got a couple of decent priority option. Not really with these two. Decent priority option there. Decent priority here. Aqua Jetters here and here. I think those are solid. Mach Punch. Okay, so we actually talked about this in the tiering. Something that Magmortar could take advantage of. It's not easy due to the fact that it's a fire type. And it's a little bit slow. But I do think Magmortar forces switches. We saw that, was it last season, I think, with Magmortar? can cause some problems for some people. I think, especially if he's willing to invest the points into making this a Terramon. I believe it's Terrable. Let me double check. Yeah, 9 points. It's right at the top of the cost section there. And you can pair that with like, not great options. He'd kind of just have to pair it with Oinkalone that week if he was going to do it. Okay, but he could like Terra Fighting and go Belly Drum Mach Punch. I don't know if it's a great option, but it is an option, and I think there's probably going to be an opportunity for him at some point. It's definitely a win condition some people are going to have to consider, because a +6 coming off a 95 attack, especially if it becomes Stab Mach Punch, nothing to really overlook. You don't want to overlook that, because it also gets like Drain Punch, Flame Charge. Could become very difficult for people to deal with. Just in terms, let's see if he's got any kind of weak points here. Special attackers, he's actually looking much more solid than Papkun does. 2 big, scary offensive special attackers. Outside of there, Empoleon's not bad, but it's not super threatening. Physical attackers, he doesn't have quite the heights that I think some people would want, because like you can get 130, 135 physical attackers, or even higher than that pretty easily. Heracross very scary in that regard. Brambleghast is a little bit difficult to use sometimes, so I would have a hard time relying on it. We've seen Crocodile be very effective. Frostlass, not very strong, but actually has strong moves between Poltergeist and Triple Axle, especially holding like a wide lens. Those are strong base power moves with little to no drawback. A big fan of Oinkalone. We saw it. I used it, 2 seasons ago? Maybe it was, it wasn't last season. I played last season. But we saw it a couple seasons ago. I really do think it has some interesting matchup potential along with being able to Terra. Because that Thick Fat ability gives it extra resistances. I don't think there's any big standouts on this team. Latios is, I think, very impressive, and I think it's kind of flown under the radar for a few seasons after being a big problem in the past. Like, I think this team is maybe a little bit light defensively, because in terms of like reliable recovery, you've got Roost to recover on Latios, not sure which one it gets. Brambleghast gets Strength Sap, which isn't like reliable, but it's there. You got Roost on Empoleon. Beyond that, not a lot of recovery. This team's not built to do long matches, but I do feel like almost everything on this team is fast enough and strong enough to kind of get 3 kills at the end of the game, do a little mini sweep once conditions are met. So I think this team has to be played aggressively to get the matchups, and it's got to be played smart to create the win conditions it needs. Moving on. We're going to talk about Mitch's team, Michigan Mudsdales. Okay, speed tiers. This is the highest speed tiers that, like, we saw Dragapult, but these are the highest speed tiers we've seen besides that. He's got 2 Pokemon above 120, not something super common. He's got some problems on this team I do want to talk about. Some things I don't like. Little bit slower overall than the teams we've been seeing, but I don't think it's too big of a problem. I think he's got a nice spread of speed tiers here. Nothing too gappy, except for maybe here and here. But I don't think we've seen anything that can really take advantage of that speed gap. I don't see anything super wrong with speed tiers. Type-wise, fighting. Okay, so we got, that's 4, 5. No, it's actually less than that. You got 4 things that don't care about it and 5 things that do. Yeah, 5. Okay. But the things that want to switch in on fighting types, you've got Dusclops can deal with fighting types that Locking Knockoff very well. Same thing with Gligar, Talonflame. Now, the thing I am realizing as I'm clicking on these is very knockoff susceptible. I think that could be a potential problem for this team. What are his dark resists? He's got Hisuian Samurott, Ninetales, Meowscarada. Those are things that don't need their items so badly. But I do think this team, with Gligar and Dusclops and Talonflame being two of his his three biggest fighting switch-ins, really do rely on their items. That could end up being a problem for him. Speaking about things relying on items, Pikachu. 90 speed isn't the worst. I kind of would like to see if you... I mean, I guess we'll talk about it. Pikachu would probably do better if there were sticky webs around, because 90 speed's not great, but that 55 attack is actually really, what's the word? Misleading. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop into the Pokemon calculator. Hold on, I got to sneeze. Seamless edit. I paused that, right? I don't know if you heard me sneeze. Sorry if you did. So let's take a look at Pikachu. So I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But here's your base Pikachu with no investment. Let's say you're probably going to go Jolly, because we don't really have enough speed. Like, unless it's the right matchup, unless he acquires sticky webs, probably got to run Jolly on this. And we're going to max out attack, right? We don't really care. We'll throw the speed in there too, even though we're not going to mess with it too much. And heck, why not? We probably got Volt Switch. Let's throw our last 4 in special attack. So it means he's got a 209 attack stat. So 209. Light Ball doubles that to 418. So do that. Let's call it Adamant. So what is that the equivalent of? Nope, higher than that. That's too high. So in that ballpark. So that means a Jolly Pikachu with max investment is just about as strong as an Adamant max attack Pokemon with 141 attack. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is, but I know Haxorus is like 147 or something. Is that right? Yeah, 147. Look, holy shit. So that means a Jolly Pikachu actually has a better attacking stat than a Jolly, not Choice Band, Haxorus. So it hits like a truck. Volt Tackle is mostly no drawback. And then on top of that, it does have the moves it needs, like Surf and Grass, not to be able to hit incoming ground types. So it's something to watch out for with Pikachu. I don't think it's going to be a linchpin of his team. We've seen how well Meowscarada has done in the seasons past. I would imagine that's going to be very important. Alolan Ninetales is something that I have played around with in the past. This team doesn't have a ton of setup options to take advantage of Aurora Veil. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe he's just using this because I think he picked up Beartic shortly after. That makes sense. He's using a Ninetales. It's got a little bit more utility than something like Abomasnow. I don't like the Abomasnow pick. I do think it supports Beartic. Not like the perfect Beartic support mod. I think we actually see that. We see a similar situation later with some other teams. I think Abomasnow may have not been the best use on this, because I think he would have... There's plenty of grass types. If you just was looking for a grass type, plenty of grass types in that range that Abomasnow is not as good as. So let's actually take a look. Arboliva, actually, Arboliva has been proven to be a pretty good grass type. Hisuian Electrode, I don't think would have been bad on this team, especially considering the speed he's got. Toad's Cruel, Torterra, Whimsicott was already gone. Like, just in that tier alone, I think there's better grass type options. So that's something I don't really love on this, but let's look at, some of the other good things. He's got 0 rock resists, and his clearing is limited to defog on Talonflame, which is also going to be knocked off a lot, as we kind of talked about. I think that could be a big problem that's going to be a big problem for this team. Hazards are going to be a big problem for him to deal with, because Talonflame is just going to have to come in, take some hits, and defog. And if it doesn't, this team's going to get kind of shredded by rocks, because he's going to have a hard time controlling that. It's kind of exploitable. Priority is honestly pretty good across the board. Like that for him. Also not included in his hazard setters here is Samurott Hisui. So I guess that can be something he wants to do. If he gets up enough hazards, other people are going to have to defog, which gives him, that's his hazard. If that could be his hazard clearing, not perfect, but you know, it's something. It's something it's a strategy we've seen employed, right? Good U-turn volt switch options. I don't think that's a problem. I don't love the use of Obama Snow. I think that's a problem here. Or I think it's kind of a weak link in this team. But I do like a lot of the other stuff that's going on. I like Gligar. I like Heatran. Heatran's something I haven't even talked about here, but it's such a solid Pokemon. It just doesn't, there's not a lot of synergy jumping out at me. Doesn't see, like, his biggest defensive Pokemon is Gligar, doesn't get Roost. Then after that, it's Dusclops, which gets Pain Split and has 40 HP, and is a knockoff target. His best defensive Pokemon is Talonflame. Talonflame does so much heavy lifting for this team. It's one of his fighting resists. It's his defogger. It's his only hazard clear, and it's one of the few Pokemon he has. Let me think. I think the only Pokemon he has, actually, that has access to reliable recovery. I think this is going to be a team Mitch struggles with unless he wants to make some changes. I wish him luck, because I'd like to see people do well. Next, we've got the Alabama Crimson Hive. So this is their first season down here in the South. After honestly a very close race away from relegation. His relegation partner in the Miami Palafins elected not to come back this season. We actually had 5 teams from the South not come back this season, wanting to sit out other obligations and whatnot. So let's dive into this. Looking at speed tiers, pretty solid, a little bit top heavy. See that gap from 87 down to 71. But this is a 71 that's probably going to run a decent amount of speed, and it's a strong priority mod. Defensively, I like that Spite Ops is there, especially because we talked about how this team's kind of top heavy in speed. Adding it's got Sticky Web, Toxic Spikes, and Spikes. It's a good hazard setter. I think this is solid utility for the price. Bastiodon, I think, is going to be a defensive Pokemon that Logan uses relatively well, especially with Terra as an option, because we saw him use what's it called? The Slug, Macargo. That's a Pokemon with a bad type, but it's got a move set that you can definitely get use out of. A lot of the other lower tier mons here don't really need a Terastallization, so I would imagine if Bastion's coming, most weeks it's going to be his Terra. Actually, let's take a look at his Terra mons real quick. I just had that thought. See, Gastrodon and Bastiodon, those are probably his Terra Pokemon most weeks. Does he have the... He can't, those would be his only 2 Terramons. He loses out on some points, otherwise he'd go Haunter and Spite Ops with Gastrodon. But he's got a couple of mix and match options, but for the most part, I would expect these 2 to be his big Terra Pokemon. Oh geez, people... you see what's happening, Brett? I mean, I know that this isn't your fault, but people are just copy and pasting stuff, then it ends up not being quite right. No, that's not the right urge. Brett understands. He knows the pain. Anyways, back to Alabama. So speed tier's solid. I like a lot of the Pokemon that are going on over there. Let's take a look at type weaknesses. Fire's a little scary for this team. There's a Sun team in this league. Could be a problem. Ice a little bit scary. Nothing on their nothing on their screams that it's a problem, but I guess Slowking's is your biggest ice resist. Is that right? What do we got? No, I got Bastiodon and Slowking. That could be a problem. That could be exploitable. There's a couple of ice types in the league that I think could give some trouble. Ghost is not something you want to be this weak to. I'd like to see him grab a normal type, or at least just not have so many fucking weaknesses. But yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing there. Dark, similar problem. Doesn't have a fairy type or anything, so I think we're gonna see a lot of like fairy Gastrodon or something showing up. And I think that these two weaknesses are a significant problem just because of how integral Slowking's going to be here. We'll talk about that in a second. Looking at hazards, I think he's set on hazard users. I like what he's got going there for hazard setters. He's got a similar situation where he's got one Pokemon who can defog, and that's not great for him. Actually, like Komala would be nice on this team. I'm realizing like pretty Spadef to be able to deal with some ice and fire types because those tend to be specially attacking types. And then give him another spinner and give him a ghost resist. Maybe help out a little bit. I think that's a problem. With such good hazard setters and then only one defogger, could be a problem. Good switch initiative, though. I think we're going to see a lot of Volt Switch, U-turn out of these guys. Probably not going to see much U-turn out of Spidops, but every once in a while. But the big one is Chilly Reception. Chilly Reception into Baxcalibur. Baxcalibur is going to get a defense boost from the snow being up, and it's going to give it setup opportunities. And on top of that, Baxcalibur can really be shut down by steel types because it'll resist ice and it'll resist dragon. It's got Dugtrio to be able to trap those. That's the other thing. These U-turners, Volt Switchers, and Chilly Reception users, those like they'll be if a like Dark type comes in and wants to try to KO the Slowking, it can Chilly Reception out and get trapped by Dugtrio. Logan's use of Dugtrio is probably going to determine how successful this team is, I think. I think it's going to be pretty important. And honestly, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this fire weakness is not that big of a problem because I think you probably do want some fire-type moves coming out at you because Baxcalibur gets an attack boost if it's hit with a fire-type move. So, I actually kind of like that for it. In terms of special attackers, nothing stand out like Haunter and Raikou being your biggest special attackers. Haunter, I think, is actually pretty good value. Decent speed, decent special attack. I don't think it's too bad, especially considering the fact that I do think since it is a affordable Terra user, it's going to be able to kind of... It has good coverage, too. Like, it's got Thunderbolt, Grass... Energy Ball? Energy Ball. Dazzling Gleam. On top of its Dual Stab. And Trick, which is going to be important for shutting down, like, those defensive types that Logan's going to want to have cleared out of the way for Baxcalibur. I think Haunter's actually a really good pick, and being able to Terra and kind of eliminate some threats that way, I think is going to be very good. Yeah, I kind of like what he's got going on here. Definitely has some issues. A very offensive team outside of Corviknight, Gastrodon, and Slowking. But that, I mean, what a defensive core there, right? Gastrodon only weak to grass. Corviknight 4x resists it. Corviknight only weak to fire and electric. Gastrodon got that covered. And then Slowking is just kind of being able to build to take any hits it really needs. I think this team has a lot of potential. Not the most, like, conventional of teams, but it definitely has... This is a little bit gimmickier, right? It's got clearly defined, like, drawn up, like... Logan's going to have a playbook by the end of the season. It's just like, okay, this is what I can do versus this. Like, definitely tweaks depending on specific matchups, but the Chilly Reception into Dougie or Bax is going to be an important play. And that's not even saying anything of Iron Leaves. Iron Leaves, I don't know. I don't know about Iron Leaves. We haven't seen a lot of it. It's definitely got good speed and attack, and it has a decent move pool. It's strong. And I don't know. We'll have to see how that develops. I'm interested to see. Moving on, we've got the Washington War Turtles. This is Mike's second season in the South. We'll see how he does this time. He's got some scary stuff going on. So I had talked earlier about Snow giving Slush Rush, like Snow using partners for Slush Rush users, and this is what I'm talking about. Galarian Slowking and Alolan Sandslash. I think Mike is probably hoping to get similar value from that combination as Brett got from Beartic and... Did he have regular Slowking last season or Galarian? I don't remember. I'm not going to go look it up. But I think we're going to see some similar value there. We see to help that along, we've got Ariados to be able to set up some hazards, Sticky Web, Toxic Spike can come out from Galarian Slowking, so he's got 2 grounded poison types, so he's pretty well protected from Toxic Spikes coming at him. And then he's also got another Ice type in Mamoswine, which is going to be able to also maybe take advantage of that defense boost from the snow being up. Plus, just one of the scariest Pokemon in the league. You've got Kill Leader from last season, Tauros Aqua, paired with another physical attacking water type in Ogerpon Water. Now, I think one of the first of all, I think those two work well together because they're going to have the same counters. Most teams are going to have 1, maybe 2 checks to Ogerpon Water. And they're going to get worn down by Ogerpon Water, which opens up the door for Tauros Aqua, and vice versa. I think Mamoswine, Tauros Aqua, Ogerpon Water, they're going to break for each other really well, and that's going to be scary. Now, I think one problem with this team, I was going to say they're a little bit weak, especially offensively, but they're not really. Sinistcha is going to, which I believe is on the Terra ban list. I'm going to double check. Sinistcha, yeah. Could cause some problems for some teams. I do think it's like what's not thick fat. It's heat proof. Heat proof, I think, is going to throw some people off. It's going to give it some matchup advantages that I don't think you'd think you'd see. Interested to see what he can do here. Got a lot of scary stuff on this team. Very few defensive Pokemon, like Galarian Slowking obviously can take a hit. Sinistcha, I think you could probably build it to take a hit. Zapdos can be built to take a hit. Colossal can get worn down, but also built to take a hit. But this is an offense-first team, and I think that shows from here. So we've got a little bit of a flying weakness, not terrible. It doesn't have the same, but Zapdos is actually a very good flying resist because if a Brave Bird's coming in, it's got static to be able to deal with that. I think that'll go well for it. I think the combination of Zapdos and Galarian Slowking is going to be pretty good. I don't think people are going to be bothering bringing a lot of fighting types against this team. Like, look at the fighting resists stacked up here. Sure, there's a 4x weakness from Sandslash. You have Mamoswine and Mabostiff, and Colossal even. But multiple 4x resists and Zapdos, which resists and can really punish people for touching it. Rock, we've talked about rocks in the league. And he does have rapid spinners. I think, we'll touch on those in a minute. Ghost, not a ton of ghost types in the league, I'm realizing. But the thing is, Mabostiff's actually really cool ghost resist because when it forces those ghosts out, like Pursuit Trapping is gone, unfortunately. It's one of the big 4 moves, Pursuit. But Mabostiff, because of Stakeout, it's going to punish whatever comes in on it so hard with a crunch if it's targeting a ghost type. It's going to feel like you would have wished you just got Pursuit Trapped with that ghost. So I think he's got his weaknesses dealt with okay. So what was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about, rapid spinners. So the only concern I have, and I've had a lot of hazard clearing concerns with a lot of the teams in the South. The only concern I have is you're going to want to go, I think a lot of weeks, you're going to be looking, if it's a Sandslash week, right? You're going to go Sandslash, Galarian Articuno, probably going to have a Zapdos on there. Just because you're going to want something off the ground because you're starting to make a problem there. Ogerpon, you paid a lot for it. You're probably bringing it to a lot of matches. And then, now that's 4 of your slots already filled up. If you're going to have Sandslash be your offensive Pokemon, then that's probably not your spinner, so you might need to bring Colossal. And also, you haven't brought any hazards on this team unless you want to go Spikes on Ogerpon, which you could. It'll force switches. But I think you're probably leaning toward either Mamoswine for another scary offensive threat. Same thing with Tauros. I think either of those. Maybe you lean toward Mamoswine because it's a rocker. Who knows? And then Gardevoir is just kind of your big special attacker. I think this team's going to have a lot of wants, and too many Pokemon have too many like roles. I don't think there's enough variety in the roles of this team. I think that might be where he runs into some issues. He doesn't have a lot of switch initiative, but I really don't think that's the problem. I think that can be dealt with pretty well. Definitely a lot of upside on this team, for sure. Did we talk about speed tiers? Fastest thing being 110. A little bit slow compared to the rest of the league, not the end of the world. This gap of... So you want to avoid gaps of 15 is kind of the rule of thumb. You got a gap of 15 here. Not great. But I really don't think it's super exploitable. Just other Pokemon, like if there was... I don't think there's a Hydreigon in the league, but a Hydreigon could conceivably run Modest and still be able to outspeed a Mabostiff. That's just the kind of examples. But also got some really solid candidates for Scarfers, especially these guys. And then also you got Slush Rush to deal with, so another thing to think about. I think that's enough to say about these guys. Honestly, and also looking at this squad here, probably the best priority in the bunch. A lot of good stuff going for it. Lots of variety on the status moves too. I like that. Okay, moving on to our final team of the South, another newcomer. We've got Joel. Just a reminder, Joel lives in Japan, so contacting him might be difficult with the time difference. He's been quite accommodating so far, so I don't really think it's going to be an issue. Just a reminder to people who might not know. Okay, so this is that Sun team I've been referring to a lot this season. And the thing is, this team is mostly a straight Sun team. I think he could probably have leaned into a little bit more, and it would have been... I think he hedged his bets a little bit on this. I think there is a regular team mixed in here somewhere. So he doesn't have to bring the Sun sometimes, but I do think Sun is going to be the bread and butter on this team. Speed tiers. Solid. No, I don't see any big issues here. You got a 25-point gap here. I feel like it's a little bit less important when you have Fastermon just because it's a lot, like... you don't want to see a 100 and then down to 80. You don't want to see that. Because that's where the majority of Pokemon lie in that speed tier. 100 up to 125, a little bit of an issue because like the 115s to 120s, those are just going to be running adamant a lot of the time, still being able to outspeed most of your guys. But Weavile is like a good mark for people to want to try to chase in terms of speed. Weaknesses. Water mitigated quite a bit because of Torkoal. It's going to, all these Pokemon that are weak to water are going to be taking a little bit less damage and a little bit less damage because of Sun being up. Ice. Is this real? It doesn't feel like there's that many ice resists. So yeah, I am recording this after, I posted transactions, obviously. Used to have Gliscor on here and ended up adding another weakness and a resist in Fortress. So I think that, I don't know, this ice one doesn't feel like it's that real to me. Although I guess you're probably bringing Tusk and Bolt to most games. Those are two weaknesses there. Your biggest resist is Fortress. Fortress is probably going to come to a lot of games. Then that means you got to bring Torkoal just to get it back to even. Yeah, the ice one could be a little bit of an issue, kind of a volatile type, but also I don't know if there's any getting around that. Ground is really interesting because he's got 3 immunities, but also 5 weaknesses. I'm super interested to see how he plays around that. I don't think it'll be easy. Could be a little bit exploitable from that. Rock, almost not even worth considering. He's got plenty of spinners and a defogger, and he's got most of the flying types in the league. Just kind of thin on flying types this season. Same thing with Ghost. Like a lot of people are having trouble with Ghost, but it's a very good offensive type, so I'm really not going to hold that against too many people. You got Weavile to really scare away Ghost. Galarian Articuno, especially defensive enough where it's going to be able to take most Shadow Balls. And then Goldengo, yeah, you don't want Goldengo to be getting a hit with Ghost attacks, but also it's faster and can threaten a lot of Ghosts in the league. So, don't think that's the end of the world. Pretty good switch initiative on the team. Also love that he got the mascot pick in there. Always love to see a good mascot pick. really solid on plenty of hazard options, decent clearing options. The I think he's got the most important one of the best single move priority users in Ice Shard Weavile. Scary Pokemon, good setup options. I think this team is going to be defined by how effective it is at using the Sun. Raging Bolt, we've seen it be very scary, even scarier in the Sun. Great Tusk can really benefit from it, but also it's just a solid mon on its own. I would say Charizard and Leafeon are Sun exclusive Pokemon. Altaria is a really interesting inclusion due to the fact that it has Cloud9, so it's like an anti-opposing weather. But also just a defogger to have. I guess it's a cheap defogger. I guess that's why most people take it. Interesting team going on here. I can't, like, outside of just seeing Sun, I had somebody tell me, like, oh, I kind of wish instead of the changes they wanted to see to the team was instead of Gliscor, just have Walking Wake. I think that would make this a much more threatening team because I do feel like it's maybe a little bit lacking on the special offensive side. Like, never mind, I lied. That's not true. Raging Bolt, Goldengo, and if it was Walking Wake, I think everyone would be pissing their pants. And also Charizard, especially in the Sun, nothing to fuck with. Like, you have the hazard clearing where you could probably afford to try to run Specs Charizard in the Sun at some point and just absolutely cook stuff with overheat, solar power boosted overheat in the Sun. Even you could even afford to go Terra Fire at some point if you wanted to. I really do think your hazard clearing is solid like that. A lot of hazards are going to be going up, but I do think this, if anybody's going to control it, I do think it's this team. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the teams here. Let's take a look at the schedule. So, got to work out the colors. So there's a little color problem, but we'll get that fixed. Logan versus Mitch. Like I said, I think Mitch has some issues with his team. Logan, I think his team is going to take some getting used to. So that could go either way. Mike versus Papkun, really interesting. I like Papkun's team. I think it's very solid. I think Mike's really thought through his team. I don't think that's a bad team. Should be very interesting. Keenan versus Joel is exciting because these are two guys who haven't really played the format too much and are both going to be coming in on the same learning curve, and we're just going to see who gets a feel for their team the quickest in this game. Pretty exciting. Yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I also, if we're looking at the schedule, I think we'll probably still do this. Like, oh, this says North playoffs because it's copied from the North, but don't worry about it. I think we could probably go ahead and run 16. Oh, we only have 6 teams, don't we? So we shouldn't do this. Let's get rid of that. We're not going to have 6 teams in the playoffs if we only have 6 teams, right? It'd be crazy. So get rid of that. 1. Where's the pound sign? 4, 3. Good. And change that to south. There we go. That's what it's going to look like. That's what playoffs are going to look like. So you don't want to be one of the bottom 2 teams because then you can't go to playoffs. Because then once you're in playoffs, you only got to win 1 game to have a chance at being promoted. And by have a chance, like, you'll be promoted. If you make it to the finals, you'll be promoted. You become South ABL champion, then you will get the #1 pick in the North next season. So that's what's at stake. Yeah, so yeah, thank you all for listening. I'm probably going to take a little bit of time to record the North one just because bigger league, and this is already a long video. Yeah, so thank you guys for listening. Look forward to hearing your thoughts on stuff. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me how I did bad analysis. And looking forward to it. And I'll see you next week. Goodbye.